is a horrifying cesspool of casual takes and absolutely daunting thoughts. And yeah, I'm going to call it Twitter for the rest of my life. I don't care that you decide to rebrand. After a decade, I'm not changing the name. It's like the Pittsburgh Steelers asking us to call Heinz Field something else. Like, we only know it as Heinz Field. But recently on college football Twitter, there was a conversation going on about Stetson Bennett and his status in college football. And eventually, whenever he becomes eligible, should he be a Hall of Famer? And there were some people that decided to text back, no, because of his individual numbers during the regular season don't justify a spot in the College Football Hall of Fame. I'm sorry. Are we just that bored in the offseason? Are we just trying to come up with the most nonsensical conversations to enjoy ourselves? Because if this is going to be my summer, let's just fast forward and get to week 1. Because Stetson Bennett, without question, is a first ballot Hall of Famer. Let's go ahead and discuss. But if you're new here, welcome on into SEC Unfiltered. It's Cole Thompson. Make sure that you like the video, hit the ring notification, and subscribe, because we're talking college football every single day leading up to week 1. Make sure that you're following us on all the social channels: TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, at SEC Unfiltered. Download the podcast version of the show wherever you get your podcast listening systems. If you like this type of content, leave a 5-star review. If you hate this type of content, leave a 1-star review. And to keep up with the #1 content surrounding your favorite conference, the best conference in all of college athletics, visit SECUnfiltered.com. This episode is brought to you by RHOBACK. Use the promo code SECU at RHOBACK.com for 20% off joggers, polos, hoodies, shorts, and more. Promo code SECU at RHOBACK.com for 20% off. What are you talking about? Stetson Bennett is not a Hall of Famer. I'm absolutely sorry. The Hall of Fame already has just annoyed the living daylights out of me because of the Mike Leach thing. And we'll get to that later. And there's a bunch of other players that absolutely belong. But when we talk about Stetson Bennett, you remember him, right? And the story about what he did in college. When we talk about Stetson Fleming Bennett IV, I get it. It is one of the whitest names ever possible. You do realize that we are talking about the greatest walk-on tale that has ever been told. I don't care if you're an Alabama fan. I don't care if you're an LSU fan. I don't care if you're an Auburn fan. I don't care if you don't like college football in general and you only care about the NFL. Stetson Bennett is the greatest walk-on story, period. I don't have any more recollection. Let's go back to the very beginning. Decides to walk on in 2017. He doesn't take a snap the entire season. He then is basically told, you're not going to play here. You're not good enough to be a part of Georgia. This is when Kirby was still getting his feet underneath him. And so the standard that is now of Georgia, that would have worked. Even then, that was still, whatever. So he goes to Jones College. And Jones College, he's okay. He plays, gets like 16 touchdowns. He has like 1,800 yards. He ends up getting one offer at Louisiana Raging Cajuns. Then he returns to Georgia. Georgia offered a scholarship finally. So he gets to go back to the school. He then sits for another year underneath Jake Fromm. And again, this is malpractice. Justin Fields transfers to Ohio State. Who knows what would have happened if Justin Fields ends up beating out Jake Fromm for the job. Then he ends up going and replaces Juwan Mathis, my apologies. He comes in and he plays. And then he gets benched for a high-profile quarterback, a former 5-star and one of the best quarterback recruits we've seen come out of high school, in JT Daniels. And what does Daniels do? Well, Daniels balls out. Daniels crushes it. He absolutely goes ham. He ends up looking like the future of this team. He ends up beating Cincinnati in the Peach Bowl. And then they are looking to take that next step. And then Daniels gets hurt. And so then what do? Who do they call? They call the Young Guns? Do they go to somebody? No, they call Stetson Bennett. Bennett comes back in. And Bennett not only goes 11-1 and throws for over 2,800 yards and 29 touchdowns, 30 total touchdowns, but he does something that no other Georgia quarterback since 1980 has been able to do, including one of the greatest quarterbacks I have ever seen play the game in Matthew Stafford. He wins. And he wins the national title. And he ends a drought that has been waiting for 4 decades in a town that has cared and catered to its football program more than most. They fired a damn good coach in Mark Richt because they couldn't get past Nick Saban in Alabama, because they couldn't get past Urban Meyer in Florida. And Stetson Bennett, the homegrown talent, the kid that grew up loving the Dogs, gets to live out the dream. He gets to do everything that was ever asked of him. And then he gets to ride off into the sunset until he comes back for another season. JT Daniels is gone. They have Carson Beck and Brock Vandagriff waiting in the wings. And everyone says this is the great swan song story. And do you remember what the crowd said? Do you remember what the average person said when Stetson Bennett decided to return? Why? What are you doing? What's happening? Are you out of your mind? You ended your career on such a high note. No way are you going to be able to duplicate that success. You had a great defense. You had a good rushing attack. You had great chemistry with the coaching staff. You were able to take over, and you did everything that was asked. Don't ruin your shot. And then the offense that was catered to him ends up elevating the Georgia Bulldogs to new heights, where he throws for over 4,000 yards and throws for 27 touchdowns, rushes for 10 touchdowns, makes it to the Heisman Trophy presentation, goes undefeated, and wins another national championship. The story of Georgia as we know it is not told without number 13. The story of Georgia as we know it is not indoctrinated without an injury to JT Daniels and Kirby Smart handing the keys back to Stetson Bennett. Bennett failed, and then he failed again, and then he failed again. And in the ultimate sign of resiliency, sticks around and says, nope, I want to be a Bulldog. I want to be here. I want to be at this program. I don't want to be anywhere else. This is where I belong. And he ultimately gets to accomplish things that have never been thought of before in life. He gets to be the guy. He gets to go ahead and be forever remembered in that town as the hero that ended the drought. He gets to be put on the pedestal alongside some of the greats of Athens that have ever walked through, and he gets to show off not one, but 2 rings. Really 4 if you include the Georgia Bulldogs SEC championship rings. He gets to do that. He gets to say he beat Nick Saban. He gets to say he's beaten Alabama. He gets to say that he's had an undefeated regular season and he was able to coast his way all the way back to a national title and dismantle TCU. What are you talking about? Him not belonging in the College Football Hall of Fame. And I know there's going to be some the Oklahoma fans in here that say, Cole, we loved you all the way up until you said the greatest walk-on story, but that title belongs to Baker Mayfield. Take nothing away from Baker. Baker absolutely deserves his flowers. Baker and what he had to do to bet on himself deserves as much love as humanly possible. Baker didn't win a national championship. Stetson Bennett won 2. Baker Mayfield could have played elsewhere. He walked on to Texas Tech, proved he wasn't good enough there, even though he was, and that was probably one of the biggest regrets in the history of college football, if not for Patrick Mahomes, but goes to Oklahoma and does the exact same thing with Lincoln Riley. He has success there. I'm not taking anything away from Baker. What I'm saying is that when you win national titles for your hometown, for your home team, for a place that you love more than anything else, it's hard not to go ahead and feel like that's something that is strong for you. It's hard not to say that that is not the greatest walk-on story ever told. It's also hard to say that that's not worthy of being in the College Football Hall of Fame, because if Baker's going to be in there, Johnny Manziel's going to be in there. Quarterback after quarterback after quarterback that has all the numbers during the regular season but doesn't have the postseason success is going to be in there. Stetson Bennett, without question, belongs in the Hall of Fame. He's a first ballot, no doubter, with any insulation Hall of Famer. And by the way, for those that are trying to use the NFL take afterwards, here's the best rule in life that I have learned, and it's really good because I'm actually somebody that covers both sports, so I can have this take. When you treat them like they're only college players, they're only meant for Saturdays, you don't over exceed the expectations. You know what they were in college. They end up balling out the next level on Sundays. Congratulations. They were great Sunday players. But it's like anybody saying that that Stetson Bennett was going to be a killer in the NFL. What are you talking about? No, he wasn't. He was lucky to get drafted in the 4th round. That doesn't mean that you're going to be great at the NFL level. Doesn't mean anything. People were like saying a few years ago, I would have taken Hendon Hooker. No, you wouldn't. No, you wouldn't. You would not have taken Hendon Hooker. Maybe in a weak draft class, you would have at least considered it, but you would not have taken Hendon Hooker in the first round. You wouldn't. That would not be a guy you build your franchise around. Stop it. But in college, you can treat them the way you want. And for a college standpoint, Stetson Bennett's a Hall of Famer. He's easily a Hall of Famer. He defied odds. He broke every single rule that ever existed on what walk-ons are supposed to be. He beat the expectations that were set by those from the outside. He did everything needed to prove that he was the difference maker Georgia always needed. And so if you don't put him in the Hall of Fame, you might as well walk into Atlanta and burn it down. Because of, let's be real, there's no reason to have a Hall of Fame. Stetson Bennett doesn't belong. Just like there's also no reason to have a Hall of Fame because Mike Leach doesn't belong. I'm sorry, when you change the game of college football the way that the air raid did, the way that Mike Leach did, the Pirate belongs on a pedestal down in Atlanta. And Stetson Bennett is really not that far behind. But let me know in the comment section down below, am I too high on Stetson Bennett being a Hall of Famer? Are you too low on Stetson Bennett being a Hall of Famer? Because that's really the only argument we need to have. Like, rate, review, hit subscribe, follow us on social media, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, at SEC Unfiltered. Download the podcast version of the show wherever you get your podcast listening systems. And to keep up with the #1 content surrounding your favorite conference, the best conference in all of college athletics, make sure you visit secunfiltered.com. I'm Cole Thompson. Until next time, folks, later.